Hey guys, welcome to the Centre Bounce. In today's episode, we're going to be talking Melbourne, how they went in 2022, and our predictions for 2023. So we also have a special guest chatting Melbourne with us. Hope you enjoy. So today we have Mr. Clarky. Let's bring him on. Cool. How you doing, Clarky?
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming on today. Obviously, it took a while for us to try and tee this up, but really glad that it's worked out well for us, and we've got you on today.
Yeah, bro, I'm really happy to be here, and love talking. I love talking footy. It's nice to talk footy again. It's good to start the year and go, yeah, we're a lot closer than we were in the October last year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, today's first day of pre-season, and it's great kind of seeing all the footage and that kind of thing of each team. Have you caught much Melbourne footage at the moment?
Yeah, I was actually watching just before, and I think I put it out on my Twitter. Max Gordon and Brodie Grundy, or a small interview with Brodie Grundy about how it's been training with Max Gordon, and it seems like their chemistry is looking like it's going to be really good, and I'm sure we'll probably touch on that a bit later. But I did love they've got a little photo there of Brodie Grundy. I'd never realised just quite how much his ears stuck out. And It kind of made me feel better as a human because I'm like, you're an Adonis of a man, and then he pulls his hair back and his ears are kind of sticking. I'm like, there it is. You beautiful man. So
It's I think that's kind of why he grew out the long hair for a long time. Hide everything back. It's worse when he's on that little scooter. I remember the Collingwood footage of him driving off from the club, massive 2-meter guy on a little moped scooter. Save money on petrol, I suppose. Before we kind of get started,
I was just going to say, if there's one thing that Grundy's got going for him, it's spunk, personality, and rucking ability. So, no, definitely. As soon as the news came out that he was coming to Melbourne, you knew things were going to be really exciting. I feel like he's the first iteration of Sam Draper for us. Just that personality going. So, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a big year for him and for your Demons this coming season.
Before we kind of get started with our Melbourne review, for those people watching the channel who kind of don't know what you do, do you want to just kind of explain to everybody, Clarky, kind of like what you do? Obviously, you go for Melbourne, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I am a content contributor for Jock Reynolds. I, along with my lovely co-host Damo, we run a mailbag podcast every week, as well as we produce both written content as well as just general tweet content out there. So if you do like AFL Supercoach and you're looking for some content, please head out to Jock Reynolds. It's such a varied and diverse community in Supercoach. So there's always a lot of really good people talking just footy. And it's an interesting way to look at, like an interesting lens to put over how you look at football as a whole. Like I know I haven't been into Supercoach as long as some people. Probably at this point, this is my 5th year actually playing Supercoach seriously. And yeah, it's something that helped me really grow to love AFL just as a sport and understand the nuance of it. So head over to jockreynolds.com.au and you can find all of our content there. And we've actually got a mailbag podcast coming out, the first one for the year this week. So yeah, feel free to jump onto our feeds and check it out.
Yeah. No, definitely. I found some of the information really interesting and can kind of relate to what you're saying about football as well. I know a lot of people, if you don't play something like Supercoach, you're very set on just watching your team. And Supercoach kind of opens you up to enjoying, every game of football during the weekend because there's always players you're looking out for or guys, your opposition has, that kind of thing as well that keep you engaged that way.
Yeah, and I think on some level as well, how I've always thought about it is that football as well is different now from how I remember it talked about when I was, say, a kid or even in high school, where I wasn't really into football that much and it was kind of a bit of a guys kind of thing. But something like Supercoach being accessible, it kind of gives people an opportunity to enter into the sport from a different aspect. Some people go into it purely because they love spreadsheets. and they love
Yeah.
looking at statistical analysis, and they can use that to sort of mid-max some points, and then you end up, having an appreciation for the sport itself. So, yeah, it's a really good way to sort of get into a sport. I think any kind of fantasy option.
Definitely. Have you always been a Melbourne fan, or is it kind of something that you picked up like later in life?
Yeah, so I have always been lifelong. My dad was the Melbourne fan, and I generally followed in his footsteps. As I said, I haven't really followed football as much throughout my whole life. Probably more so in it's been a focal point of my existence for the last 5 to 6 years. Maybe even a little bit longer, but sort of growing up, I have some core memories of, going fishing with my dad during definitely some of the darker times of the Melbourne Football Club. But, the one that always comes back to me is that my dad had this red Camry station wagon, and it was kind of one of those, it was we needed a car as a family. It was what we could afford. And we had this wagon that was probably 20 years old at the time. And he took me fishing one day, and I remember sitting at the back of the station wagon with the boot open, listening to a Melbourne game and just watching the disappointment on his face as the game went on further and further. And I was like, this is what it's like to enjoy sports. This must be what it is. And I was just probably sat there reading a book while he was fishing. So, yeah, it's been a lifelong connection with the Melbourne Football Club for me.
Oh, that's very cool. Alrighty. We might get into talking 2022. Obviously, you guys 2021 had won the grand final, and congratulations for that.
We did it, baby.
I guess kind of heading into 2022, what were your expectations of Melbourne? Did you feel like you were going to go again, or did you feel like, we're set to make finals, but there might have been some changes, that kind of thing? What were you kind of feeling?
Personally for me, and this is probably something a lot of Melbourne supporters can relate to, I was definitely like, well, this good time can't last forever. Something has to happen. I feel like not that we didn't earn it, and not that we didn't play good football throughout 2021. There was definitely we kind of hit a peak that felt in a way unsustainable, especially as the off season for 2021 happened, where the biggest thing for the off season for that 21 to 22 period was Darren Burgess leaving, who was our fitness guy and performance manager. And he was integral, I think, to our premiership year, because the best thing that we did that probably Melbourne has struggled with, and even went on to struggle with in 2022, was just our inability to finish games. We'd either start strong and then cough up a lead. So I think the Sydney game, we had almost a 30-point lead or something like that, and ended up losing that one. And similar, we did the same thing against Brisbane. Or we would start off slow and then get ourselves into a position where we'd have to play from behind. And I think that's probably the start of the 2022 season was a conflict for me, because I was like, well, we should be able to do it again because we've done it. Once you've done it, you know that you the list that you have, you build on it, but the core of the list should be enough to at least make finals, if not top 4. And to go back to, I was kind of hoping that we would go back to back, because I felt like that would be, let's just go back to back, and then we don't have to worry about it for another decade. I can live another decade without getting there, as bad as that sounds. So yeah, look, my expectations were tempered, but look, I think every football fan thinks it is that you think you can do it. You think you can do it before the round one whistle goes. You're definitely hoping that this is the year.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at a lot of clubs, and like you're saying, the playing group might not have changed, but the supporting aspects, you're talking about Darren Burgess, and I know he's been doing really well at Adelaide, where he's gone to. But kind of those supporting players, how influential and how important they are in kind of keeping the team running as well. Something like that.
And the staffing changes for that 21 season. So over Christmas, I actually have the book here. I got a copy of the Captain's Diaries from Max Gorn that I've been kind of flipping through in my free time, and it is really interesting because the way that he talks about the core group in that 21 season, and each chapter is a reflection on that round and that game, and some of his feelings around that, and I think the way Melbourne evolved as a playing group was really important because they're all focused on all in as a team and supporting each other and really building on the success of one another rather than focusing in on, oh, well, Harmsy, you could have done that, or Melksham, you're crap, you could have done this, or Petrarca, you should have just given that one off. It's less about focusing on individual success and doing what's necessary. But the way he talks about Alan Richardson, Choco Williams, and Darren Burgess coming to the club just kind of cemented to me that those three personnel changes were kind of created a trifecta, and all the people that we already had, like Simon Goodwin, for his ups and his downs, I think I've always had reasonable faith because he's been consistent in how he wants to build the team. Like it's been 1 year up and 1 year kind of falling short with him, but as far as what we are as a football club, I don't think that's changed, and I'm happy for that. But those three acquisitions and in their positions that they played going into that 21 season, really said to me, this would be a good year. And to go 9-0 kind of really cemented that. I had no doubts, and it sounds conceited, but after the 9-0, I was definitely like, this is the year. Like, if we're going to do it, it's going to be 21.
Yeah.
And obviously, 22 kind of, we fell away in some aspects that made 21 so successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like you guys kind of got found out a little bit in 2022, kind of your success coming off the premiership year? Maybe teams tried to evaluate you a little bit more, that kind of thing, or was it injuries, or kind of what happened there for you?
I think looking back on it for myself, the biggest concern that I had was connection with the forward line. We as a club, even in 2022, and you've got the stats up on the screen, which I love, we finished second, right? And we conceded the least amount of points out of any team during the regular season, if I'm correct, which is no small feat. No. So that says to me, the defense is working, but if we're not putting goals to get ahead of teams, then what's going on? Like, if we're not putting them away and we're not maintaining a lead, then there's something going on there. So I didn't think that we were found out in a particular sense, because you have a football system that works, and every game, the opposition does exactly what you do, and you go away and you look at, what are our past results against this team? What have they done? What are they doing to other teams? And how does our structure factor into that? Like, that's all stuff that they do every week in, week out. It's part of being a footballer. So I don't feel concerned that Melbourne's any more or less found out. I think, like I said earlier, my biggest concern was watching us finish out games and not being able to convert on the score. But I mean, even looking at, you've got up there our best performance of the year, 39-85 against Freo. Sorry, Damo. But 12-13 is not... We finished second on the ladder. 12-13 is not... Even if we made it to the grand final last year, Geelong would have destroyed us. That Geelong team would have absolutely punished us.
Yeah.
That's right. I feel like there were other moments in the season where that inefficiency moving forward, like I can't forget that game against Collingwood. It just felt like the game was on your terms. You were getting the ball forward, but these bomb kicks inside forward 50, just turning it over, and it would give them what they wanted. They want to play that fast ball movement, slingshot type of style. And despite you smashing them in the midfield and, very casually moving the ball forward, it just wasn't moving forward on the scoreboard for you. And it just felt very often that that connection between the mids and the forwards was missing. So I guess that's probably been the biggest concern, I think, for you.
Yeah, and I think you're really accurate in putting it that way. And it sounds really negative to say it. And like, I'm by no means a professional footballer, so I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I'd do better. And it's easy to sit on the couch or in the stands and whatever and go, well, what are you not kicking it to that guy? He's open 40 meters down the field through 6 other guys that you've got to try and see past. And one of them's Mason Cox, who is about 7 meters tall. But
Mm.
you're right in saying that. I think some of the issue was that Melbourne's solution to trying to get the ball out of a congested possession or a congested midfield was to just kick it high and long. And if you watch, and that's another difference between 21 and 22, we weren't doing that nearly as much in 2021. And we've got these guys at half forward, and even deep forward that can help us with that. But we had no Tom McDonald, so it was up to Bailey Fritsch and Ben Brown. And Ben Brown, I think, is an interesting touchstone to sort of think of, where you see Ben Brown, you go, oh, the second place Coleman leader for 2 or 3 years in a row kind of fell out of favour at North, and realistically is not a bad footballer, but he's not come to Melbourne to kick 50 goals a season. He's not come to Melbourne to win a Coleman at all. And his role in all that is to try and get the ball to ground. So I wasn't expecting him to take marks, but they were kicking it to his area as if he was going to, because at the end of the day, he's still recovered from a serious knee injury. Like, that's just not his style anymore, really. Like, that's not the role that we have for him. So I think Tom McDonald coming into that mix, with Bailey Fritsch and with Ben Brown, and even now Gawn and or Grundy, that can sort of work for us, but we need to move away from that bombing it high and long and actually utilizing the guys that we've got on the ground.
Yeah. That was.
Do you
definitely,
think that there was... Sorry, Big J. I was just going to ask a quick question. Did you think that it could be another year in the 666 rule? Because I remember in 2021, you were coming out of the middle of the stoppage at the center square and hitting lead-up passes on the lead. Whereas, do you think that another season, with teams getting used to the 666 stoppage set up in the middle of the ground, it became a lot harder to just waltz the ball out through the center, and people were sort of trying to make you go a bit wider? Did you see any of that, or do you think it was just that you might not have the legs to just keep driving through and hitting targets up?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a factor. Like, as every year teams evolve naturally, both in game plan and in individual athletes. So I think it's not unreasonable to think that another year, and as 666 becomes, this, I've never played football any other way kind of thing, it's going to evolve further. But at the same time, it comes down to work rate, I think, because we've got Clayton Oliver, who I think could probably spit out about 20 handballs in a 1 meter area while surrounded by 30 guys. Like that's the space that he works. Like, we have these guys who work in tight confines and are there to get the ball out to, say, the Angus Brayshaws or the Christian Petrarcas, who he uses his body and strength to break out of those situations, or Jack Viney and that kind of thing. Like, we have all the pieces to get around that. I think it's just a matter of giving the guys the confidence to sort of, I think as well, sort of, not to halfway through a thought with another thought, but other teams would probably come into it and go, well, if we're not going to stop them directly, if we congest it and make it difficult for them, then it's going to have to get ugly. And that's always a factor. Like, it's not always going to, and it's about coping with that on both sides. So, because I think that's going to be an issue, whether it's 666, whether they bring in some other formation, it's always going to be, well, the second it's there, crowd them so that they can't get the clean possession. Because if you give us too much space, then we're going to do exactly that. But if you don't give us any, like, we need an alternative to that, which I think is maybe, some of the stuff that we've got coming through, hopefully for this year, will work around that, and that'll probably be a focus. But I think the other concern as well, it's the legs. You got to have those legs to run out the games and have full intensity for 4 quarters. And I know that's difficult, but it's definitely the biggest thing. Like, you want to see at least intensity. It's the number one thing. I don't mind if a guy's not running like Ed Langdon numbers, 40 or 50 Ks in a quarter or whatever ridiculous number he wants to run up and down the field. But it's like when people talk about, say, seeing Cozzy Pickett off the ball or whatever, and maybe he's not running as fast as he could or anything like that. But then you watch him, as soon as he's in there with an opportunity, he's there with intensity and he tackles to ground, like he tackles with purpose and tries to make that stoppage. And I think that's just as important, if not more important, than being able to run. It's about creating those opportunities for your teammates.
Agreed. 100%.
Sorry, I don't know if that answers the question directly. I kind of
it did.
I kind of
did.
Spun out a little bit there, but
it did answer the question, because then it sort of maybe has brought up another question for me. So do you think that the way moving forward, in another way, I suppose, to sort of help moving the ball forward, do you want to see maybe a bit more dash off halfback, perhaps? If it could be, you have your in and under working in tight spaces, these midfielders dish off a handball to for example, a Salem running past. Do you want to see, I know Salem had an interrupted season last year, and he's quite an architect for you. Do you think that he would be, or players like that, him and Bowie?
yeah,
you want to see more of them moving up the ground a bit more?
I probably would, and I think not a lot of people sort of think as well about they do and they don't. Like, they talk about Angus Brayshaw, right? He is a very smart decision maker, and he's very clean with the football, and he moves to a halfback role, but is also he's kind of a backup inside mid. Like, that's the kind of mid that he plays in at the moment. You could probably say that Melbourne has a surplus of inside mid kind of players. Him off halfback and becoming a winger, along with, as you were saying, we've got guys like Hibberd, and we've got, Langdon on the forward wing. We've got all these guys coming off the back of the ground as well that are ready to move forward. Salem is also very good with his craft. So I think that'll probably be part of the game plan coming into 23. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And I think guys like Michael Hibberd, as much as I love Hibberd for what he's done with the Melbourne Football Club, especially after everything in his history, I think it's very much his position is probably one that's up for contests, because he will only hold that. Like, all of those halfback guys, maybe apart from Brayshaw, like Brayshaw, Hibberd, and Salem are all pretty much in the same bracket, I think, of like, well, there's a guy just on the edge who could take any one of you if you get injured, if you're just in a really sour patch of form. I think even then, we've just signed Brayshaw for another 7 years. So I think that might even include some more mid-time for him, because I think that's where he really wants to be. So that could create some opportunity for guys like Bowie, and, we're not even talking about like the Bailey Lorries in the wings and the Trent Rivers waiting to just come in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the reason why Jaden Hunt moved on, because it's just so competitive in that defensive group, even that backline group. And I hope he's going to be brilliant at West Coast, because he seems like something that they desperately need.
Yeah, I remember Rivers was really good in that 2021 season, and then did show some good signs in 2022. Kind of that running guy who can kick quite far as well, and pretty accurate. I think that kind of, I'll say, Jaden Short kind of prototype player is something that a lot of clubs are kind of looking for and realizing, hey, this is how good they are. Let's try and have at least one or two of them in the team so they can help the transition up the field. Do you feel like maybe the club's going past like the Ben Brown type now? I know you've got a couple of kids coming through the VFL that are doing that, or it's more about letting Brown kind of not have a defender on him, taking the pressure off it so he can do well as well?
I think I've always thought that Ben Brown is kind of there to take the defender.
Okay.
and give opportunity to Bailey Fritsch or to Tom
Mhm.
McDonald, and I think you can probably, there might be stats to back me up, or there might not, and if there's not, I don't want to hear about it. But if there is, by all means, Tom McDonald and Bailey Fritsch have both really flourished with Ben Brown coming into the side, because Ben Brown, if you leave him alone, he's still a superb set shot, absolutely superb. Like no doubts in my mind. So if you leave him unchecked, if you give him any kind of chance, he's going to make you pay for it. So by forcing teams to match up on him, then we've got Tom McDonald was sent at the start of the 2021 season. I believe he was told to go and explore his other options, and his other options turned out to be zilch. But in 2021, I think he played some fantastic football. And I think he really embarrassed whoever told him to go search for his other options, because he showed that he can still do that. And Bailey Fritsch as well. Bailey Fritsch wants to win a Coleman at some point in his career. The way that he takes shots and really takes those opportunities. So, I don't see any reason that group can't work together. So I don't think Ben Brown's necessarily there to take those marks or to do anything like that. I think he's there kind of a bit of both, but mostly as well. If he gets the ball to ground, we've got Charlie Spargo, we've got Cozzy Pickett, and even Neil Bullen, I think, was probably not that long ago on the outer edge of his career with Melbourne. Like, he just wasn't playing anything that I thought worked cohesively as the group, and then he came back and evolved himself to be so much better. The young guys that we've come through, I think, still fit that mold, though. These guys who we've never really had, I think, in recent times, a tall leaping forward like a Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron kind of player. So I think we'll hopefully see this year guys like Jacob Van Rooyen, who I think he's, a fantastic and beautiful little leap at the ball. And I think he was very, very close to being played last year with the forward line issues that we were having. And then we've also got a few, what's Max Gawn going to do there? Sure, he can't kick a set shot, but Max Gawn can go forward or behind the ball and clunker mark very easily. Like, he's very good in a pack contest because of both his height and athletic ability as a ruckman. I'm not too bothered if he hits the goals or not, if he's going to take 20 marks in the forward 50 a game. Yeah. Like, at least the opportunities there. So, I think Melbourne do. There's something in the DNA there that they really want to have that. They want to have like, like we've got our own like Max King, or we've got like whoever. But the sooner that we kind of realize that at the moment that's not the team that we've got, the sooner we can adjust for it.
That's cool.
Well, speaking of the team that you have got, it's a bit different this year. That's going to be coming up because you've got 3 additions, none bigger than Brodie Grundy coming across from the Pies. You picked up Lockie Hunter. That, to me, came out of the blue. And you also picked up Shaki, which I think was one of the earlier ones of the trade period. So, I mean, you got 3 established players coming in. One of them widely regarded as one of the best ruckmen in the game. How do you think your trade period went? Could it have gone any better?
I'm pretty happy with the trade period. I think out of it's just without knowing how the team looks with these guys. The Lockie Hunter one is one that kind of, it comes back to me every now and then. I'm like, oh shit, we got Lockie Hunter. Like, we've got another like top tier wingman. Where the heck are we going to put him?
Yep.
Like, how are we going to fit all this talent in? And I think Brodie Grundy is massive, but it's a question of, well, what does that look like? Because we've also got Max Gawn, who's been all Australian for every year for the past 5-6 years. So, it's going to be really interesting. I think overall, I'd probably give us a decent pass mark on the trade period.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
I guess
he came
obviously
in
with
because you lost Jaden Hunt, right?
Yeah, probably. Look, it'd probably be part of it. Jaden Hunt, I think, was probably going to go regardless. I kind of got the feeling, and this is with absolutely no confirmed information on my behalf, but and you know what? Looking at all the departures, right? Apart from Luke Jackson, we knew that Luke Jackson wanted to go back to the West. Totally fine.
Yeah.
Look, you helped us win a premiership, mate. Go be with your family, live your best life. I wish you all the best. Toby Bedford, Sam Wiedemann, and Jaden Hunt are three extremely talented players who were just outside the 22. You know, you could probably even say one or two people outside their respective positions. In fact, Sam Wiedemann and Toby Bedford, I would probably say, were the next in line for their respective roles in the forward line. Jaden Hunt, same thing. He's in that back line and he plays a similar game to Trent Rivers, to Christian Salem, to Angus Brayshaw now coming off the wing on that side, and Jake Bowie. The rise of Jake Bowie. It's just a matter of depth. So I think Lockie Hunter coming in, I'm not sure if he's going to be in the starting 22. I would assume that based on his skill level, he could be. Like, there's no question about his talent, but it's going to be, what does this team look like as it is?
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like any of those? So we've talked about Luke Jackson going. Obviously, like you're saying, Bedford was probably the fringe guy. I know he was medical sub quite a lot during the season.
I love Toby Bedford as well. I absolutely love that kid. One of my regrets of the last year's season is not buying a Toby Bedford badge while he's still at a Melbourne one, because that kid is going places, and I hope GWS use him well.
Yeah, I know North were trying to get him across as well, but obviously he chose somewhere else. Do you feel like any of your delistings will probably hard done by players? I know, like, we've talked about the wing role being tough to break into with Hunt, and that seems like where Oscar Baker's playing at the Dogs now. Do you feel like Rossman or Brown or Dorr, they were kind of finished up with their time, or maybe they could have gone around again?
I'm probably, out of all of those, I think Rosman was the most shocking one, because Rosman's still a reasonably young kid, and I think he had a lot of space for development, and was another one playing in that forward space where he was sort of touted as, like, he could take a good tall mark, was a bit athletic, and I rarely heard a bad thing about him. Oscar Baker he's played maybe one or two games in the past couple of years. And I remember very distinctly one of them, watching him, and once again, it's not a lack of talent, but he did not gel at all with the current Melbourne game plan. And that was really clear. And sometimes that's kind of just how it is. I'm glad that he's gotten another chance at the Dogs, and I hope they can use him for something. Mitch Brown, like, his retirement was, and same with Majak Dorr, probably their retirements and are not unexpected, because they're both, Mitch Brown definitely a fringe player and played mostly Casey for a lot of the time that he was there, barring any injury, and Majak Dorr was kind of there solely as an injury replacement. I would have been surprised if he himself was expecting to play senior footy without a significant injury. Not to say, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Majak and how he handled, his unfortunate circumstances and his dealings with mental health. I think that's absolutely amazing that he's come through that, and I really hope that whatever he does continues to be positive. But I don't think he came onto the list expecting to play a senior game. I think he wanted to be involved in the system at the time. So it's, I don't think at all any of those are purely shocking. So mostly to make room and people who we just didn't need.
Yeah, it's probably good to have Matt Majak as well. Kind of, I know he's spoken about just being involved with like a team that's won a premiership, that kind of thing. That 2021 season, obviously, he didn't play the games, but kind of being around the club and that kind of thing was one of his big highlights.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fantastic that he has that experience and that he can be there as well as once again, for lack of a better term, or as a minority player as well. I think it's really important to have those diverse voices at any club, to be part of that that community and to really help with the space of the club and make sure that we have as many voices that can be heard as possible.
Definitely.
Absolutely. With Sam Wiedemann, he was an interesting one this year. It's like he had a shot with McDonald out of the side to really cement his place in that forward line, and it looked like you guys tried to give him an opportunity to do so, but it just didn't seem to be working 100%. What do you think was the biggest reason why Sam Wiedemann is now at the Bombers? Things just didn't seem to click. Do you know why? Was it due to lack of fitness, or was it that he was in and out of the team? I don't know. It was a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a lot of respect for Sam Wiedemann because he was with Melbourne for a really long time, and I don't think people quite realise, sort of outside of Melbourne supporters, I don't think you quite realise just how long he was with Melbourne. He has a lot of latent talent, I think, and that is one thing, but applying it was really difficult for him, and you could kind of see it. Like he struggled a lot to take contested marks as a big lead. Like he was meant to be a big leading forward, like that's what we built him as, that's what we trained him as, that's what his specialty was, and he just kind of never really found his groove. There were periods where I very distinctly remember saying, he needs too much confidence to find his purple patch. So you would see a game where he would get a chance because, Tom McDonald's out, Bailey Fridge, like whoever, because he was always the next tall in. And he would have games where he comes in and he'll kick like 3 and you'll be like, whoa, like Sam Wiedemann, let's go. Like, that's great. Like, you're doing it. And then he'd have one week where he'd maybe kick 2 behinds to start off with, and it would just be all downhill from there. I compare him a little bit to, I had a friend that I used to play basketball with him and love him. He was an absolute gem of a human, but he would just have weeks where he would miss his first couple shots. And we all knew, like, we're all best mates, and we just knew that the rest of the game was not going to be good because you'd see him beating himself up. I'm not saying Sam Wiedemann was beating himself up necessarily, but you'd see that downhill trajectory. And I think he probably suits the Dons a lot more in some ways. Just if you want someone to run at the ball and provide a forward target, I think he probably would be more suited to the way that they deliver the ball inside 50.
Good. Something for me to look forward to then.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Sam Wiedemann
like
is going to hopefully fit us.
Well, like I said, I mean, he has a lot of natural talent. Like there was no denying that. I remember having a few games where I sat pretty close to the goals, and I'd see him go up, and I'm just like, yeah, look, like there it is. Like he knows exactly what to do. It's just about putting it together, and if he puts it together, I think he'll probably be a reasonably prolific forward.
Awesome. Fingers crossed then, I guess. Yeah. And we'll also have our fingers crossed for these draftees as well. You picked up Matthew Jefferson with pick 15 as a key forward, and you picked up Jed Adams, a key defender, with pick 38. So you've gone 2 key position players, one on each side of the ground. Do you know much about these guys? Were you happy with them as selections?
I'm reasonably happy that we picked a key forward. To be honest, before we got the Brodie Grundy deal kind of done, I've been a little bit worried for a while about our ruck stocks. Just thinking about who we had in this, like we had Aaron Nietzsche for a while, which is all well and good until he did an ACL every year for 3 years, and bless his soul. I hope he's landed on his feet. That was just unlucky. But Matthew Jefferson is a key forward. I really am finding interesting because training reports as of today, it's the first training back from the Christmas break. And a few of the training reports that I've seen have said that at the start of the ground, at the front of the ground, Tom McDonald has stood out, Ben Brown standing out, Van Rooyen standing out, and also Jefferson, just as another person. So without quoting directly, but there is a passage of play here where somebody had pointed out that Van Rooyen went for a mark, it's come off his hands and rebounded to the deck, and Jefferson has just scooped it up and put it through the goals like it was nothing. And I think that kind of talent and depth in our forward line, I think we need to be more flexible. And I think we can't be afraid to move the pieces around. And I'd really like to see some of these young kids put some faith into them. Put them around with keep a Tom McDonald in because he's got the seniority and he's got that experience. Bailey Fritsch, I don't think will come out of the team unless barring some kind of significant incident. But you can put these young kids in and just give them a run and get that experience and build them up. So I'm pretty happy with both of those at 15 and 38. I'm not sure so much if we'll see Adams anytime soon. It's our defensive six is probably, you could say, without a doubt, set. Particularly between Petty, Lever, and May. I don't think Salem's going anywhere without an injury, and I don't think Brayshaw, if he lines up with the defenders, is going without an injury. So where does he slot in the order? Probably, maybe somewhere even behind Disco Turner, because I think Daniel Turner, unrelated, but Daniel Turner, I think, had one of the unluckiest debuts in recent memory because he was playing a brilliant game and then got concussed and was done. Yeah. Haven't heard a peep from him since. So I kind of would love to see someone like him get another chance as well. But it's always good to have young talent. The Category B rookie, Faris White, he's one that I'm actually pretty excited for. I think with the right, he's at a club as he's like 208 centimeters or something ridiculous like that. He's a tall boy, huge. And he's at a club with Brody Grundy and Max Gawn.
Yeah,
could you ask for a better tutelage? I don't care if he's a squire bringing in their socks. If I was, developing in that system, that'd be just payday for me. I think he could probably, with enough application and time, I'm really excited about his athleticism. And look, I hate to say the two magic words, but basketball background. No. So he knows how. Yeah, he knows how to leap. But as a basketball player as well, myself, it's you can't discount that kind of athleticism and power for a leap. So I'd be really excited to see if he comes from something. Verrill and Seston, we don't really know. I think some of these guys, I think Jefferson is probably the closest to maybe, if we saw one this year, I'd probably say it would be Jefferson out of all of those. But I think the draft was, after we got our deals done and we got Shaki and we got Hunter, we got Grundy, it was kind of, this is all about maintaining the future.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of the future, we're looking now towards 2023. Our predictions are that we reckon you're going to win at least 16 games, which would have you finish in the top 4. Do you agree? Objectively speaking, do you agree with that?
Top 4. Okay, as a Melbourne supporter, top 4 is a pass mark, and I haven't been able to say that, I think, in forever. But yeah, I think objectively you can agree with it. Melbourne's problem isn't anything to do, it's not the same as North Melbourne or Hawthorn or Gold Coast, like these teams that still have like, they're a puzzle with like a couple of missing pieces, whether that's, a coach or maybe some key position players or anything like that. Melbourne has one of the most competitive midfields. On paper, we literally have probably the best defensive line.
We are testing out.
And our forward line and that connection with the forward line has been the big issue. If we can solve that, I mean, even if we don't solve that, we got 16 wins last season.
Yeah.
So I think 16 and top 4 probably is attainable. I think it's realistic.
Yeah, and it's not like, I would say like a Port Adelaide with a Boak, they're coming to their kind of twilight of their career. Oliver and Petrarca especially are definitely kind of in the peak moment now, and the issues you might have had with Gawn getting older have now been covered a little bit with Grundy. Obviously, our first question coming up here is, I guess, will the Grundy-Gawn combo work? And then how will it work? Have you heard anything kind of in the murmurs of how they're going to be playing together on field?
I haven't seen anything with enough substance personally. And I think that is deliberate. I don't think anyone is purposely gonna leak that or any kind of thing. I think we'll know once the preseason comes up. We'll get the one preseason game, and then we'll kind of have an idea. And then the team sheet I don't even think the team sheet for round 1. I don't think we're going to know exactly how this is going to work until round 3 to 5. Okay. Like a couple games, like, are they... Well, here's the thing, right? So I have a couple of theories about what could be done. Mm-hmm. So the first theory, I think, is probably the most popular and the most common, is that Grundy will probably do a significant amount of the ruck work, with Gawn moving forward of the ball to provide a tall marking target, because he's a better forward than Grundy is known to be. Now, I think that seems like it'll be closer to a 50-50 split, or maybe even a Luke Jackson to Gawn split, so like a 60-40. But I think Gawn isn't specifically going to be forward. I think he'll also be used as a defender at points when required. And you would have seen that in the past in a few different games, that they'll move Gawn behind the ball defensively. And what does he do? He takes a brilliant pack mark and then sprays it out of bounds or something.
Yes.
And look, I love Max Gawn to death. My captain, my captain. But that's what he does. So I think that to me seems like it would make the most sense. Like, play both of them. There's no reason to not play both of them. And it's easier to train one of them to be a forward than it would be to have some kind of rotating ruck. Like, Brodie Grundy hasn't come from being the number 1 ruck at Collingwood to be the number 2 ruck on the bench, or not even playing, or playing for Casey. No, that's not the reason why he's come. And Max Gawn isn't ready to do that. I don't think he's at that part of his career. I think if anything, it probably gives him a chance to rest a bit more without hesitating about it affecting the team so negatively. He can go, oh, well, I'll just take one game. You can have Brodie do the, ruck the whole game or whatever, and bring in, whoever's not in, like, Tom McDonald, Brendan Brown, whoever can do the forward rucking.
Yeah, definitely.
The second option is a little bit more outlandish. and you're going to have to work with me. It's kind of a combination of number 1, but also somehow utilizes some of our midfield depth. Now, there are 2 boys who play for Melbourne who I'm a big fan of, but are quite young and relatively unknown. And that's James Jordan and Tom Sparrow. Now, these 2 guys, I would say, in the context of Melbourne, are the next Petrarca and Oliver, if they ever get the chance or it's required upon them. Now, I think there is an as I said, outlandish, but creating 2 different rotating groups of mids, say one that utilizes Grundy, Petrarca and Oliver, say as the core midfield 3, and then you could have someone like Gawn working with a Sparrow and Jordan, which allows Petrarca and Oliver to rest a bit more. Now, it's definitely outlandish because what the hell are you doing with Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca if you're not putting them in the middle with the ball? Now, I understand. But I think it gives a chance to use some of the midfield depth that Melbourne has. Even Angus Brayshaw, I think he like I said earlier, he does want to play mid. It's not that he can't play mid. He's very good as a halfback. He's very good with the ball in general. But if you asked him, oh, well, what position would you want to play? He'd probably say, I want to be a mid. He's gone he's gone to the halfback out of necessity. He's gone to the wing out of necessity. And that's the good team game. And he plays his role and he does that well. I think ultimately it'll be rocky at the start, but the Gawn-Grundy combo, once it's had a few games to sort of settle in and understand how it works against opponents, I think it's going to work out for us. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I guess as you were saying, Grundy's not come to Melbourne on, he was on $1 million at Collingwood. They're paying a bit of the salary, but he's not come there to play VFL every week, right? They're going to try and get the most out of him as much as they can for as long as they can.
And he's too good to play VFL. Like, no offense to VFL, once again, not a professional athlete. I'm very aware of that. But, even everyone playing VFL, they don't want to play VFL. They want to be in the big league. And yeah, you don't come off a contract like that to come to Melbourne. They have probably promised him to play a majority of his time in the senior list.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You might not be a professional athlete, but you do have a basketball background. So that's got to count for something, right?
Yeah, I'm 50% of the way there.
And then we mentioned Ben Brown before about his role in the team. So I guess if what you're saying is to be, I suppose, applied moving forward, then he sort of is playing his role, and it's not that he's out of form. It's mostly the lack of connection between the forward line and the midfield. Do you think that sort of connection will lead to an improvement with Ben Brown and the forward line as a whole? Do you see that improving markedly this year, or is that going to be more of a work in progress, you reckon?
Yeah, look, I think we'll see a significant improvement in Melbourne's forward line, whether that's connection or on the scoreboard. Look, you can't always guarantee that it's going to appear in the scoreboard, but I'd love to not have, a win where we're 10-19 or something ridiculous like that, which felt like it was happening more often than not. Ben Brown as a role player, and I think even on the weeks, people are still measuring him by the number of goals that he kicks, which isn't his fault, but it's just having that understanding of what the Melbourne forward line wants to do. Like I said, it's purely my speculation, is that his role there is to either bring it to ground, clunk the mark, or to take the tallest defender, because he has the form. I would argue that Ben Brown has one of the most beautiful and reasonably accurate set shots in the league. Still, even now, he's not washed up by any means. He's come to Melbourne to do something different. So Ben Brown's form and leading the forward line, he's leading by playing his role. And I think seeing Tom McDonald come back to the park would make a big difference in that. And that's before we even talk about what the role of the small forwards is going to be. So Charlie Spargo kind of moved up a little bit to that half forward wing. Cozzy Pickett they've thrown him in a couple of CBAs every now and then and just going, just go in the middle for a bit. Why not? So I think there's a lot of room for flexibility within the forward line, but what they will have worked on, or at least what I hope that they've worked on this offseason, isn't just, how do we make Gawn and Grundy work? What's our overall game plan? But actually focusing and go, well, hey, we're not playing terrible football, because objectively, and I think a lot of people can say it, Melbourne aren't playing objectively bad football necessarily throughout the year. But we can clearly see what the issue is, and that issue is not converting on the scoreboard, not hurting other teams, and not having an ability to consistently find your forwards without panicking. So I think it's going to take a lot of people in the forward line, as well as some of the guys in the mid really to find their form and to find that connection with each other that was there in 21.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I suppose that brings the discussion about the Melbourne Footy Club to a close. Clarky, thank you so much for coming on. Please tell everybody where we can find you in terms of socials and any websites that you might have, podcasts. Please tell us where we can find you, man.
Yeah, so I personally, you can find my personal Twitter at QuantumJC. I know it's a weird one, but I found it and nobody else seems to have it. So even if you Google it, I'm the first thing that comes up, which is great. But you can also find our content on jockreynolds.com.au. We're Jock Reynolds on Twitter. Please support all those guys. They are all, and I know, Big J, we've had you on a mailbag before. So we love interacting with as many people in the community. If you just want to talk football, if you want to talk Supercoach, but all the guys of the Jock Reynolds crew are just some of the nicest people. And, genuinely, I would encourage anyone to support them.
Definitely. Well, thanks very much for coming on. Remember, guys, like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and we'll have the rest of the team reviews coming out shortly. We've also got some Super Coach content coming out as well. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Any final words, Joe?
Nah, other than please do have a look at Jock Reynolds. These guys are insanely good at their Super Coach content. And especially now with the teams coming back, please keep an eye out for them. Thanks again, Clarky. And
Thank you.
We'll see you soon, guys.